Please welcome GLAAD's Senior Director of Transgender and Queer Rights, Jennifer Levi.
You all look amazing. It's really wonderful to be here. Thank you so much. I really want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Gatherings like these are far from a given these days, so it's particularly special to be together. When I was preparing my remarks, I reached out to one of the most charismatic leaders of our movement, Kate Kendall, the former executive director of the National Center for Lesbian Rights. And I asked Kate what she thought LGBTQ people need to hear at this moment. Kate pointed me to the writings of prison abolitionist Mariame Kaba, who has said, "Hope is a discipline." Hope is a discipline. It's the discipline that's driven our work, the work of this movement, for generations. 22 years ago, GLAAD hosted the first Spirit of Justice Award dinner, and we honored the incomparable Mary Bonato. Mary was fresh from the first state marriage victory in Vermont. We were still 15 years from the hard-won Obergefell Supreme Court victory, a critical victory that GLAAD will defend against any attack. And it was 22 years before that, first SOJ dinner, that GLAAD was born. We have made tremendous progress in the decades since GLAAD's founding, and we've brought so many people along with us. But our opponents have spent those same decades working, plotting, and planning to dismantle our progress. For instance, it's been nearly 20 years since the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court decided the Goodridge case. Amazing. Incredibly important victory. And over 7 years since Obergefell. But the time that has passed really doesn't capture the threats that marriage equality now faces. And as we've already heard, 50 years of precedent was not enough to protect Roe versus Wade. And with voting rights and affirmative action at the Supreme Court this term, even bedrock cases like Brown versus Board of Education, decided almost 70 years ago, feel shaky. When it comes to equality, we find ourselves in a time warp. And sometimes I pick up the newspaper and I see a news headline and I honestly can't tell whether it's from 2022 or 1972. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. Things are bad. Transgender people are in the political crosshairs. Queer kids are under attack. The right has weaponized the First Amendment to make our schools places of strife rather than support. LGBTQ older adults are aging with limited and mostly no resources, and we all face barriers throughout our healthcare systems. For queer people of color, the situation is made even worse by the racism that persists throughout all of our institutions. But GLAAD is not backing down or giving up. And despite everything, even with the odds stacked so dramatically against us, we continue to secure breakthrough legal victories. Why? Because we have hope and because we remain disciplined in that hope. In Alabama, we partnered with movement colleagues to prevent a state law from going into effect that would criminalize medical providers and parents who help transgender youth get the medical care they need. We secured a court ruling to prevent the law from being enforced. And we did so in front of a Trump-appointed judge, no less. It's in just over 3 weeks, we will defend that ruling on appeal. And I'm so grateful for parents like Cynthia Lamar Hart, who you'll hear from next, for having the courage to speak out while so many others have been silenced. In Virginia, GLAAD helped an African-American transgender woman who was wrongly incarcerated in a men's prison and denied the health care she needs. Our plaintiff, Keisha Williams, brought an Americans with Disabilities Act claim against the Virginia Department of Corrections. And just this past August, the Fourth Circuit became the first federal appellate court to make clear that transgender people like Keisha can pursue ADA claims, confirming legal arguments GLAAD has made for decades. Under the leadership of Ben Klein, GLAAD sued an assisted living facility. Yes, let's hear it for Ben. Absolutely. Awesome. GLAAD sued an assisted living facility in Maine on behalf of Marie King, a 78-year-old transgender woman who was turned away from an assisted living facility and forced to languish in a hospital emergency room for months. Because of our actions on Marie's behalf, Sunrise Living adopted an LGBTQ inclusive policy that has served as a model for facilities throughout Maine and beyond. But of course, as we know all too well, we have to continually expand the legal tools that we use to make change. Many of the attacks on us are happening not in the courts, but in the legislatures and at the local level, and we're making progress there too. GLAAD is fighting to expand access to PrEP, groundbreaking medication that reduces the risk of transmission of HIV by close to 100%. And we're advocating for pharmacies to be able to give an initial supply of PrEP without a doctor's prescription. And this year, we worked with our Massachusetts partners to pass the PrEP for Minors law. Under the leadership of Polly Crozier, yay Polly, GLAAD worked with coalition partners to revise laws in 5 out of 6 New England states to reflect the richness and diversity of modern families. And while we didn't get the Massachusetts Parentage Act passed this session, with our continued hope matched with hard work and discipline of all of us, I am confident we can get it passed next term. To achieve this much progress at a time when our community is facing an onslaught of discrimination is extraordinary, but there is so much more work to do. The Supreme Court and federal courts across the country have taken a hard turn to the right, as we all know. The Supreme Court majority, as we've already heard, has signaled, with Justice Thomas saying it most clearly, that it wants to reconsider all the fundamental rights cases our community has depended upon for decades. We must and will hold the majority to its word about the stated limits of the horrific Dobbs opinion. Reversing Roe v. Wade is devastating enough without the additional threats it poses to other long-established precedent. And at the same time, we need to work in legislatures as well as at the community and local level to beat back attacks on our community. Right now, we are urging Congress to pass the Respect for Marriage Act. This bill is long overdue. The RMA would codify marriage equality at the federal level and finally repeal the misnamed Defense of Marriage Act to ensure that our marriages continue to receive the benefits and protections we all deserve. We're calling on the Senate to pass it into law as soon as its members return to session in November. We are fighting in court and in state legislatures on behalf of queer students throughout New England and beyond to make sure schools can be havens, not battlegrounds. And Chris Urschel, Chris? Go, Chris. Chris is working with the ACLU of New Hampshire to fight against a school censorship law that keeps teachers from talking about race, gender, sexual orientation, and disability in the classroom, much like the Florida Don't Say Gay or Trans law. And in Ludlow, Massachusetts, 2 students told their teachers that they wanted to go by a different name and pronouns, but needed more time before telling their parents. And now the school and the district are being sued because teachers allegedly provided these students with too much support, and GLAAD is helping to defend the school district. What we are working towards is so simple. We want the freedom for all of us to be who we are, to remain in our communities and with our families, however we define them, to love and be loved. The LGBTQ movement has always been diverse and multifaceted, and now it is more multi-generational than ever before. Veterans of the movement, those for whom just being known to be gay put them at risk of arrest, are fighting alongside queer and trans youth whose voices and innovations are so sorely needed. And our success turns on all of us working together, and each of us doing our part. Because if we have learned anything this year, it's that Supreme Court victories alone will not protect us. But let us remember that Supreme Court losses alone will not defeat us. So many lives depend on those of us in this room maintaining our hope. Because without hope, and this is my hero, Kate Kendall speaking, every evil thought or idea will be willed into action by those who hold the levers of power to suffocate us all. That's Kate. And so we need people to be fierce and fighting for those whose lives are most at risk. And hope is essential to making that happen. So as I close tonight, I want to share a story that inspires me to maintain hope. Thinking about climate here. The state of Maine was once a forest. For centuries, it was almost completely covered in trees. And by the year 1900, American colonizers had destroyed over 5 million acres of forest. But over the last century, since 1900, trees have returned to Maine. People planted them, and they let them grow. Farmlands became the forests that they once were in Maine. This is a story about the power of nature, but it's also a story about hope and discipline. Because in order to sustain its tree cover, the state of Maine plants millions of trees every year. People place seeds in the ground, they hack down invasive species. And of course, trees can grow on their own, right? They surely don't need us to care for them. But with support and attention, they're much more likely to thrive. And today, over 90% of Maine has become reforested, making it the most heavily forested state in the nation. It's awesome. But why do I tell this story? The reason I tell this story is because, like, one form of hope is believing that forests can grow on farmland again because they have before. But another form of hope is putting in the effort to make sure that they do. And so tonight, all of us together here, I ask you to commit to this activist hope, this disciplined hope. Because of course, it's easier to watch a tree grow than to water it. And it's easier to despair of a hostile judiciary and polarized politics than fight to change them. This moment demands all of our engagement. We have the tools, the knowledge, and the power to make things better. And together, we can change the world one day, one tree, one landmark legal victory at a time. Thank you. You all are amazing. You all are amazing. And now it's my tremendous honor to get to introduce our next speaker remotely. You're going to hear from Cynthia Lamar Hart. And I first met Cynthia Lamar Hart at the 2-day preliminary hearing injunction in our Alabama case. When I was in the courthouse, as I walked the corridor, the federal courthouse in Montgomery, during breaks and at other times, I wondered who was this charismatic woman sitting patiently for hours on end and who huddled with a group of other local parents during each break in the courtroom action. You'll get to see Cynthia's really very charismatic. And I quickly learned that Cynthia is not just a powerhouse lawyer, but a mama lion who has shared her story of loving and supporting her own transgender child, now an adult, and helped other families navigate the barriers that hers has tackled. She shared her story in a powerful Friend of the Court brief filed in our case on appeal. And unfortunately, she wasn't able to travel to Boston tonight due to a family illness, but we're really thrilled that she was able to record her message for you all tonight. So welcome, Cynthia, remotely, and thank you all.